3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Listen and blessings, fam. Look, I'm coming back with you guys, or to you guys, with another episode. Now, this episode is going to get a little personal. Actually, a lot of personal, because I'm going to be sharing my testimony with you guys. And I'm going to do it in two parts. So the first part is going to be, I'm just going to break it down for y'all right quick. First part is pretty much my primitive years before going to college, because I think most of my testimony really comes in, and you can really see that while I'm in college and a little bit of post that. But I just kind of want to give you guys a background, who I am, where I'm from, my upbringing, and all that stuff. So, to further ado, here we go. So, a little bit about me. I'm from a town called Beaumont, Texas. Now, if you're from Houston, you'd probably know where it is. But if you don't, sorry, you got to Google it on the map. I'm about to tell you where it's from, where it is. But it's in Texas. And, you know, my upbringing, it was good. I had a really good childhood. I didn't really miss out on much. You know, I think it's grateful that I had a two-parent household, and parents had degrees in college and they worked. My dad has worked for Exxon for years, and my mom worked. Sometimes she didn't work, but still, like, we had everything we could ask for. I was pretty much a dream childhood, essentially. Like, I couldn't. I mean, obviously you can complain, but I really have no complaints when I look back at it. But yeah, I was raised in the church, to go to church and be about the church. But soon you're gonna realize that didn't really take hold of me. I mean, there's some definitely foundational roots that were instilled in me that I still keep to this day. Some that I didn't keep, that I am rediscovering. Let's use that word. And so yeah, and the church I went to was pretty much an all black church, and a smaller Baptist church in Beaumont, Texas. And I learned a lot of good things, and I also learned, or I picked up on a lot of bad things, like a lot of bad habits, that some of the stuff I'm still working through today. Some things that I realize that I do that's quote unquote not biblical, and I am deciding to, hey, I want to keep this quality, I want to get rid of this quality. That's pretty much where I am in this walk of life right now. I'm just really getting down to the roots of who I am as a person and what that means moving forward. But yeah, like my dad, he was a preacher. He preached every so often, but he's pretty much the right hand man to our pastor at church. And so my mom, she grew up in the church, and so from a very young age, I knew if it was one thing, we was gonna go to church. All right, on Wednesday, sometimes we was there, but for sure we're there on Saturday at 8 a.m. doing Bible study. Sunday school is what we called it, or in the summers, everybody, I don't know, no matter what ethnicity you done been through Vacation Bible School, VBS, Rays of Sunshine. Yeah, you've been through that. Everybody knows that. And don't forget about them orange dreamsicles. Gas. But I digress from that. But yeah, so I knew that church was not an option for me. It was mandatory, right? And so what that instilled to me is that this is another thing that I have to do in the week. Growing up early on, I didn't realize like the relational side of what it meant to be a Christian, what that really meant. And so growing up, I realized that, okay, well, if I'm the preacher's son, then that means I have to look a certain way, I have to act a certain way, I have to dress a certain way, I have to carry myself a certain way. So really, I learned how to fake the good preacher's son role very early on. I saw like this version of perfectionism, and I didn't see too much real things and real conversations happening around me at the time. So growing up, like I formed that image in my mind. It's like I gotta uphold this image. And so I got to make sure bring my Sunday's best. When I'm at church, it's cordial, and I'm speaking to everybody. I'm serving. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But internally, there was no relationship. Like externally, you would think, oh yeah, this kid is definitely serving the Lord. He's definitely doing this. But internally, there was no relationship. I can tell you what the Bible stories were, but I couldn't tell you what it meant for me. I can tell you what it meant for other people, but I didn't place that in my heart. I didn't know, right? So within that, I was baptized at a really young age, right? So in the Baptist church, where I grew up, they taught that you cannot get baptized until you not get baptized. Sorry, I misspoke. You cannot partake in communion until you get baptized, right? And so growing up, when I was young, I would see my brothers get taking communion because they've been baptized already. People around me taking communion because they've been baptized. And so what that told me was I don't want to miss out. My FOMO really kicked in. I didn't want to miss out on the communion, so I'm gonna go get baptized, right? And I was literally just talking to my dad yesterday because I recently just got baptized again. Praise the Lord. Not because I know what it means, but we're gonna get into that in another episode. But yeah, I told my dad. He was like, "Hey, I want to get baptized because I accepted Christ into my life." Blah blah blah. Maybe part of that was true, but a big part of that was simply because I just simply wanted to partake in communion. That's why I got baptized at a young age, right? So I guess that started my my quote unquote faith journey. But essentially, I just did it just so I could partake in communion. And yes, if you listen to this, you're like, hey, that's just wrong. But I'm a kid. I don't know no better, right? So, going now I'm growing up. I'm getting into things, go through elementary school, middle school. And middle school was a interesting time for me because, I was actually bullied for the first time. That kind of played a part in who I am today. But one really big thing for me that happened in middle school that really, really changed the trajectory of my life in a negative way was I was introduced to pornography. And I want to say, I think I was in 6th grade. And I'm not going to go into extreme detail on this because I do want to do a series on pornography and why you should not watch it, why you should not partake in it, how damaging it is, and yeah, I'm gonna get to all that. But I was introduced to it in 6th grade by somebody older than me, by 8th grader, and I didn't know what I was looking at. And when I looked at it for the first time, that's when everything changed, when my innocence was taken away from me because I didn't really know. And so that's something that I struggled with up until recently, actually. Like that right there, that's what I'm 24 now. That's literally 12 years of my life where I struggle with that, and there's a lot of things that came with that, but we're gonna move on from that because that's not the main point of what I want to get to. So yeah, that kind of got me in that place. I saw those things, saw those images, and that forever changed everything for me. And so now I'm moving through high school. High school was a little weird for me because I went to Beaumont Central my first 2 years of high school, and I transferred because we moved out of Beaumont for various reasons to Houston, and I ended up going to graduate from another school my junior through senior year. So it was weird because I was going to high school with people I went to elementary, middle school with all my life, and I made the decision because they were going to let me stay. I made the decision to uproot and go to Houston because I thought, I was playing tennis at the time, and I was trying to get better. I wanted to play in college, so I thought, well, if I'm in Beaumont, there's not much opportunity for me to play better players and see different people and meet potential college scouts because I knew all the good tournaments were in Houston, and traveling wasn't really an option to do full time because obviously I had 2 brothers. One was in college, one was getting ready to go to college, and at the time, money didn't fall from trees for us. I mean, I wish it did, but that's the way God had it for us, and money didn't grow on trees for us, so I knew that'd be limited. So moving to Houston was my only chance to really put my name out there and see what can happen. So like my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I mean, I really wasn't trying to serve God. I was just going through the motions at this point. Like I'm a professional fake. I was professional at being fake, and I was just going through the motions day in and day out, not really reading, not really praying. I would pray every now and then, or I'd read every now and then, but it was just because I felt like I had to, so I was trying to fulfill the obligation, check a box in a sense, and that lasted a really long time. And when I changed schools, like my first high school I went to, my freshman sophomore year of high school, was predominantly black, and you had Hispanic, you had Asian, you had a few white people. But when I changed high schools and went to Houston, it was completely flipped. It was majority white, and then there was a decent amount of black, and then a few Hispanic, and a good Asian population there. But for me, that was a huge culture shock because I was not used to being around that many people that don't look like me and don't represent what I represent, And so when I got there, if you know me now, I'm like, my personality, I'm really extroverted and I'm exuberant. But when I was in that situation, in that moment, I remember walking in on the first day and walk through the double doors and I see all these people that don't look like me. I'm just like, well, I don't know what I got myself into, but I don't know how this is gonna go. So I pretty much created a shell right there, a little shell of protection, and I just wasn't me for a long time. Like once I got comfortable with people and my little friend group that I had, then yeah, I kind of came out of my shell a little bit. But I was still a little timid. I was still a little shy and all this stuff. And what's crazy about moving to the new school, because it was going to be better opportunity. I think it was a little bit more rigorous education from one school to the other. And I actually experienced racism for the first time at this school. And I'll be honest, in the moment, I thought it was kind of funny because I always hear about racism, but I never experienced it myself. And yes, it sounds bad, but that's how I guess I cope with humor. If you know me, like I feel bad about saying this, but I can laugh about anything. I can turn anything into a joke. That's a blessing and a curse for sure. But in the moments when things happen, I didn't really process them and understand like, okay, this actually happened. Like, what does that mean? I just kind of just laugh it off. Like, wow, they really said that. So I'm going to give y'all the two examples because they're a decent amount, but these I'll only give you two examples. So my second week of being there, I was in this engineering class in my junior year, and the teacher gave us the task of making these paper airplanes. Now, growing up, I was a huge nerd, and I was fascinated with airplanes. And at one point, I wanted to do aerodynamic engineering. And aerodynamic, that make no sense. Aerospace engineering. And so my parents, they bought me like all these books. I'll go on YouTube of how to make the best paper airplanes. So I still had a few in my memory, and I wanted to be the best. I'm the new kid on the block, so I gotta assert my dominance, right? So, excuse me. So I made this airplane, and it's glorious, beautiful. Everything is folded to precision, and I'm ready to throw this thing down the hallway and see if I can get the longest distance. And this kid comes up to me. This white kid comes up to me. He's like, "Hey man, let me see your airplane." I was like, "Oh nah, man, like." I made sure I really took my time. It's probably the best one I ever made. I don't want you to like touch it and mess it up. And he's like, "Nah, bro, I'm not gonna mess it up. Like, let me see it." I'm like, "No, I don't want you to see it." And as he's saying this, his face turned red. I'm just like, "Oh no, this is really about to happen right now." And he looks at me. He calls me the N-word and says, let me see your airplane." And I'm sitting there in disbelief, like, wow, he really had the cojones to say that. He really just said that. Now, my initial reaction at first was anger, and I was like, "Man, I could hit this dude right now." But then I thought, "Nah, it's not cool. It's my second week out here. I don't want to get a bad rep for being like the angry black kid." You know what I mean? And I had a teammate that I had met. He was also white. He didn't know what to do. And there was another black guy in the class that I was making a friend with. He was in disbelief too. I looked at him, and he looking at me. And we just kind of look at each other and kind of laugh it off. And like, wow, he really just said that. Huh, interesting. So in my mind, it's like, well, racism does exist. Even though I never experienced it before, but I did in that moment. And I was like, well, here we go. So what I did was kind of petty after that. I didn't tell nobody about it. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell no teacher or no principal or anything. So what I did was when we got to class, every day I would sit in front of him and just stare at him. I just stare at him, not say anything. And eventually, he stopped sitting with everybody else and sat in the back of the room where the computers were, with his back turned to the classroom. and headphones on. Now, I don't want to call that a victory, but I was very passive aggressive in that moment. You might call it petty, call it what you want, but I did what I thought was right in the moment, right? Not saying that was good, not saying that was bad. Regardless, that could have been an opportunity, to share Jesus with him. But that comes from me not knowing what I was doing, what I was partaking in. So, missed opportunity there, right? And then the second one came from a teacher, actually. And we were going over lab safety in an environmental science class. This was my senior year. And, she was going around the room saying, hey, you can wear this, you can't wear that. Like, if you have long hair, you got to put it up. Just going through the formalities. And she looks at, everybody in the room, it's cold, it's like in the wintertime. And everybody in the room has hoodies on, right? She could have looked at anybody, but she looks at me dead in the face. It's like, hey, if you have a hoodie, you have to take it off. But she looked at me and goes, if you're wearing one of those shirts, and kind of pauses, then you have to have an actual shirt to wear before you do anything with the labs. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, she's talking about a wife beater. Side note, horrible name for a shirt. Absolutely horrible name for a shirt. Just call it a tank. But a wife beater is a horrible name. Anyway, she looks at me and says that. I'm in disbelief because as soon as she looked at me and said one of those shirts, I knew exactly what she was talking about. And everybody in the class just kind of looked at me like, whoa, she really just said that. Like, what do we do? I was like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, this is a moment where, I can be the mad black kid in class. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to let it slide. Jesus, I'm going to turn the other cheek. Probably didn't even know that verse at the time, but that's what I did. I turned the other cheek. Didn't say nothing. And, I just kind of moved on from that. And that was a interesting experience, to say the least. That's when I realized, the world ain't all sunshine and rainbows as you thought. There's plenty of other scenarios, but those are the two that really stuck with me, because they were the most direct. Like, there's a lot of subtle things, but we don't need to get into that. But yeah, that was pretty much my high school experience. I mean, I kind of enjoyed it, but I was ready to go to college at that point, get away from all that, and go to a new place and meet new people and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much that's like almost pretty much sums up my childhood. I mean, I can go back and go into details, but there's a lot of things I don't think really matter for this format. Like, if I get into I plan on doing a family episode down the line, and then I will bring up things that happened in my childhood that kind of shape who I am. But for this format, I don't think it directly plays into the format or the structure I have set for this episode. So this is part 1, and just the foundation, laying, okay, this is how I grew up, this is what's going on. Give you a little bit of background how I grew up in a church and what that meant, like where I was spiritually, faith-wise. And yeah, so thank you for listening to this. This is only part 1. Now, part 2, I'm telling you, this is where all the meat happened. This is where life drastically changes for me. Drastically. I mean, complete 180 for me. And this is where the Lord showed up the most. Immediately, from what I see, definitely the Lord was taking care of me and providing for me pre-college. But during my college time and a little bit after, where I am now, it's just so much has happened in the last 6 years. Has happened, I think, in the first 18 spiritually. So thank you for listening to this episode. Be blessed. Don't be stressed. It's your boy Shell. I'm signing off. Peace.